All right, this is Roger Roots. We are live in Tacoma, Washington, at the federal courthouse building here. We are still at the Schaefer Cox resentencing hearing. The headline, by the way, is we still don't have a sentence. This is midday. The judge has adjourned for lunch, and apparently we will have a sentence at 1:30. And by the way, he has already imposed a guideline range that is lower than his current sentence. So he's going to get a break from this proceeding. We don't know what the sentence will be. Again, the judge says he will render sentence at 1:30, and we will update you when that happens. I'm here with an actual witness to the events back in 2011, and this is Brian Christie, and he actually knows Schaefer Cox, and he was involved, or at least he was a witness at the time, but was not called at the trial. Is that correct?
I wasn't called to the trial with at least maybe half a dozen other people, and it wasn't right. It wasn't a good trial. He should have been in Fairbanks with a jury of his peers, not moved to Anchorage, not set up by the FBI. His defense money has been stolen, up to $3 million of his defense money, and like Robert John, his attorney, and his friend, the attorney, said it's the biggest travesty of justice he has ever seen in his 38 years as an attorney.
And you said that Schaefer came to you at one point as things were really escalating and the government was really targeting him, and Schaefer said, what did he say to you?
Well, it was after he was at the meeting with Jeremy Baker, and they were threatened to cut their throats and bleed them out at the feet. He came to my house after that, pale, and said his militia had taken a mind of its own and it was out of his control, and he was scared for what was happening. He was not guilty. He was never given a fair trial, and the Anchorage federal prosecutors have been lying all through this deal. They're part of the Obama administration debacle is what they're doing.
And you said that the militia people that had gotten out of control that he was referring to were all these informants,
right?
But not true. They weren't the true militia people that he was working with.
No, the informants were paid off by the feds and paid to lie, paid to set him up, and they had a couple. Well, both people had felony charges dropped, big bucks paid to them if they lied in court, and it goes on and on. It needs to be investigated, and these people need to be held responsible for doing this stuff. These people now, they're lying to get him to stay in prison, so it'll cover up their crime more.
And also, I'd like to also say we have a state house representative from the state of Washington, one of the greatest states in the country, and this is Mr. Sutherland.
The greatest state in the country.
Hey, my mother was born in Everett, Washington. Is that in your district?
It's just outside of my district.
Okay, my mother was actually born right in his area, and he's a state legislator from the state of Washington, and he's come to observe. And
I'm State Representative Robert Sutherland. I represent the 39th Legislative District, Monroe, all the way up to Cedro-Woolley, basically east of the I-5 freeway to the mountains. This case, and let me just start out by saying that I wasn't at the trial. I don't live in Alaska. I don't know Schaefer Cox. All I know is what I hear in the media, what I see, or what I hear when I talk to people. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm here to learn. But what I've seen talked about online, what I've seen here in the court today, leads me in one direction where it seems to me that there has possibly been a miscarriage of justice in this case. Without getting into a whole host of specifics, what I heard in the court today were a bunch of accusations that were not substantiated by any of the facts that were brought out this morning. And so people sitting around having coffee talking about this, that, or the other does not make a plan, does not make a conspiracy. When the government has to pay informants to come up with stories, like Schaefer had a plan to commit murder and things like that, when in fact there was no plan, there was no conspiracy. When the government has to make stuff up to put someone in jail, I have a problem with that. And so that's what I saw in 2 hours this morning. I saw the prosecution team throwing terms out there against Schaefer Cox, listening to the defense come back and refute them tirelessly, one point after another. it's clear who has the facts in this case from what little I've been able to see of it. The 2 hours I've been able to see, clearly the defense has the upper hand. They've got the evidence, the data to back up what they're saying. The prosecution team just throws things out there. They call Schaefer names, they call for conspiracies, for plans to commit murder and things like that. But the evidence that was presented was not there. And so, as a representative, I serve on the Public Safety Committee in Olympia as well. While this is a federal case, I have no jurisdiction, nothing to say having to do with the federal jurisdiction. These kinds of court cases affect me. They disturb me when I see a government with unlimited resources coming in and the heavy hand of a government down on a citizen for very minor offenses. Maybe you and I wouldn't speak the way Schaefer spoke at certain times. That's not a crime, to speak your mind. We should be allowed in this country to speak our mind. It's whether you go out and you start acting on those things in a violent manner, which, based on the evidence I saw, did not happen. And so, I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to get your hopes up. But I am somewhat hopeful that we're going to have a judgment come down from this judge, having heard what I just heard in court, in our favor, I should say in Schaefer's favor. I can't predict that. That's just my gut feeling on what I was able to hear inside. I heard the prosecution, I heard the defense, and the defense won the day. That's all I can say.
Introduce him one more time there, Roger.
Again, this is State Representative Robert Sutherland from what district? 39th District of Washington. And again, just the update. The judge says we will have a sentence at 1:30 today, so we still do not have a sentence. This is the longest sentencing proceeding I've ever seen in federal court. This is a 2-day sentencing, and we're going to have a sentence at 1:30. The judge says they've already agreed. The judge has already said the guideline range right now is 188 months to 235 months guideline range. Now, our lawyers made arguments for departure. Schaefer Cox's lawyer made arguments for downward departure on a basis of what he called imperfect entrapment, but we don't know if the judge will grant that or not. So right now, at least the numbers that have been thrown out, 188 to 235 months, which is lower than his current sentence, it needs to be said. So we will update you as soon as we can.
One more thing I have.
I